Welcome, Ian Gold, directly from England to Brazil. How are you?
Thank you, bom dia, and it's so lovely to be here with you today, Heverton.
Yeah.
We're able to travel, but we can still be with each other.
Yeah, very well. You are welcome here. I know that you already been in Brazil this year, and we are going to talk about this lately. And let me start em português. Eu sou o Heverton Anunciação, consultor e escritor em CRM. Eu criei essa revista semanal eletrônica para trazer grandes convidados do assunto Customer Experience CRM para o Brasil, para compartilhar esse conhecimento e unir cada vez mais a nossa categoria. O meu convidado dessa semana é Ian Golding. Ele é um dos fundadores da Associação de Profissionais de Experiência do Cliente, a CXPA. Ele é também um dos fundadores da CXPA, um dos primeiros certificados no mundo nessa categoria. Ele é autor do livro Customer What? The Honest and Practical Guide to Customer Experience. Ele participou do meu livro 30 Advice from 30 Greatest Professionals in CRM and Customer Service in the World. Ele escreveu um artigo Building Skill for Customer Experience Leadership. Ele atua como consultor e jurado em palestrante em vários eventos ao redor do mundo. E ele é um consultor certificado Lions Six Sigma Master Black Belt, e ele tem trabalhado nos últimos 20 anos melhorando performance de negócio ao redor do mundo. Tá? Então, eu convido vocês que forem fazer perguntas, comentários depois, podem deixar aí embaixo nos comentários, para depois, quem sabe, a gente vai conversando com o Ian no tempo. First of all, Ian, just curiosity. My name is Heverton because the doctor of my family went in England in 1969, and it was a year when Everton won the championship in England.
Is that true?
It's true. It's true. It's very true.
Wow. Okay, well, Everton. I don't know. Maybe it's better to be called Everton than Liverpool. That would sound a bit strange. But if the same was true for me, I support an English soccer team that most people have never heard of, and that would mean I would have to be called Leighton, because my football team is Leighton Orient. But that's a whole different podcast.
Did you have any favorite team, soccer, football there?
So. If I have to follow a Premier League team, it would have to be Tottenham. That's I have a soft spot for Tottenham. But,
okay.
Yeah, no, I prefer real football lower down.
I see. Okay, let's start. Yeah, my background is IT, and I started working with CRM in 1999, and since that year, the struggle continued to develop a customer-centric culture for you, for me here in Brazil. Peter Drucker said one phrase that changed my life when to work with marketing areas. Drucker said, "Never fight with marketing. You are going to lose." However, the association that you created now has 9 years old. And how to make this maturity to work together with marketing sales areas? How is fighting in your back? What you can share with us this challenge of reduce this attrition?
It's a very, very interesting question. And actually that comment about never argue with marketing is as a result of us living in a very capitalist world. Now, I will often say to people that I never expected to become anti-capitalist doing what I do for a living, but the more you work with organizations and you see this blind desire to make as much money as possible, the more you realize that is creating very much everything that's wrong about the way business conducts itself around the world. And it's one of the reasons why, regrettably, over the last 20, 30 years, businesses have lost sight of the importance of human interaction. And so what's really fascinating is that it is starting to change. I'm not a marketer. by background. I've always been involved in the field of process improvement and customer experience. And even I can see now that it's changing. And one of the things that triggered it for me is when I was contacted by the Chartered Institute of Marketing 4 years ago, who said, Ian, we need you to come and teach marketers about customer experience. And it was quite an interesting thing. What you mean they don't know? And actually, it's really not uncommon, actually, for marketers to think that, actually, no, we are customer experience, but no, they're not. What they have been doing is determining how to make companies money, but not necessarily in the interests of the customer, in the interest of the business. But what I think we've been realizing for the last 10 years that that's not necessarily sustainable anymore. And actually, as a result of the pandemic, it has accelerated the demise of organizations that are just trying to grab money. And it has, I suppose, in a way, accelerated the need to understand more and more, how can we differentiate on the whole experience going forward, not just our products and services?
Yeah, I got it. The other point is, in 2012, in the article, The Age of Customer Capitalism from Harvard Business Review magazine, the dean of Hartman School of Management, Roger Martin, concluded, it's time to abandon the popular tese of that company top priority should be to maximize shareholder value. The greatest value should be generated to customer. Ian, you mentioned that one of the main difficulties of the client experience professional is how to educate shareholders to think about business sustainability and not just focus on short term. The client will always return with a long-term relationship. How do you suggest professionals try to do this in their company? To bring the shareholders, to bring not just CEO, because for me, I agree completely with the Roger Martin.
It is the greatest challenge of all, actually, because the profession that customer experience has become has been working very hard to influence at leadership levels, executive teams, directors, and there is a long way to go before we get to a point where we can be comfortable that they understand customer experience. But there is a growing recognition. But the group of stakeholders that we have failed to influence, and I think it's really important that as a global customer experience community, we acknowledge that, is that failure to influence those who are responsible for the leaders. It's ultimately about accountability, and leaders are accountable to the shareholders. And so very often, whilst I get frustrated with CEOs doing certain things, what a CEO is doing most of the time is what the shareholders have told them to do. And if they don't do it, they'll get fired. So we can't blame them for doing what they've been told. But what shareholder communities still do not understand is that customer experience is a long-term strategy. It's not something that is going to deliver financial benefit by clicking fingers. Yeah. But most capitalist organizations were created not to think long-term, they're created to think short-term return to the shareholder. And so shareholders are only thinking about the next month, the next quarter, the next dividend payment. They don't care what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15 years' time. And so we need to invest more time in allowing shareholders to understand that if they continue to think short term, the risk is that the business will not be there anymore. But because we're not going to see businesses sustaining themselves in that way going forward.
Yeah, exactly. As most of the companies, they are fighting to find the right proper employee. Maybe in the future, I don't know. I agree with you about the capitalism, but maybe in the future the company will going to avoid some shareholder that don't believe in culture. I don't know. We have to make the balance.
Well, that's right. And actually, I mean, everything in life is a cycle. And, quite an interesting industry to look at the cycle is professional services. So if you look at lawyers, many lawyers around the world work in partnerships. And, lawyers actually own the company, but they're very interested in the value of the company so they can retire. But they're not interested in anyone else. Yeah. So what happens when they retire? How are they going to carry on doing what they're doing? And, that profession has become, in general, not a nice profession to work in, let alone a profession that does the right thing for its customers, because all lawyers have been told to do is generate fees, keep generating fees, but they want to generate the fees for the partner, not for the employee. But the problem is that these lawyers, those partners are retiring now. This is the way business used to be done. And the same is going to happen with shareholders. They're going to retire and the new wave is going to come in. And my only hope is that as we increase education around customer experience, the discipline, the competencies, the rigor, the new wave of leader that moves into those shareholder roles has a much better understanding of the need to think long term. Because there are so many, with your background in IT, all industries are being disrupted now. It's not as easy to build something really big that stays forever, because disruptors will come in and break your industry apart. So if we're going to sustain ourselves, we've got to think long term, or there will be no business to deliver a return at all.
Yeah, good point. Good point for the people think about the week. Yeah. Once you had also mentioned that many companies should measure the customer experience wrongly. The solution to do this for the company to have professional with ability to analyze the perception of the customer and obviously then make the change, because there is no point in measuring if you're not applying the change.
Yes.
And this company should apply the theory of a cause and effect and go calibrating, of course. What tools and methodology best fit for employee to measure the perception of the customer do you mention today? Because one of my last book, I got almost 20 methodology, process, whatever. If you want to make a business, if you want to be a Disney, a Zappos, whatever, there are many. But today, if one company wants to start, what's your suggestion?
Right. So again, it's a brilliant question and conversation, and a continuing conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you and I could talk about this for 3 days without drawing breath. I am very bold in the way I will argue that many organizations today are measuring the customer experience badly. And they're measuring it badly for a number of different reasons, but primarily it comes back again to corporate politics. Voice of the customer and measuring customer perception has, for some reason, become all about chasing numbers. And many organizations have become obsessed with the score. I say become obsessed. They've been obsessed with the score for 5 to 10 years, but that obsession just builds pace. But as you said, the problem with this is that it's not about the number. The reason why we're capturing feedback from customers is to try and determine what is it that we are not doing well enough, where is it that we need to focus to have a direct impact on customer perception, and as a result, financial performance. That's why we measure. That's why we capture customer insight. But so many organizations have forgotten that. And to validate what I'm saying, earlier today, I published something on LinkedIn that I had the fortune of doing 2 weeks ago. And as you know, I host a number of awards ceremonies, amongst other things. And at the UK Customer Experience Awards 2 weeks ago, I was very fortunate to be able to interview Fred Reichelt himself.
I saw your LinkedIn today. Yeah.
And it's not often you get the opportunity to grill someone who created something like that.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating, and I suspected he might say what he said, but to hear him actually say it is refreshing, because he basically said, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that companies are not using this mechanism in the way it was intended, and they're chasing the number. They're not driving human change, and it's so good to hear him say that, because unfortunately, like any methodology, over time it becomes abused, because sadly too much human behavior is about personal gain. Just coming back to your question about what should companies be doing, the advice that I always give is that the world has convinced itself for some reason that it has to measure certain things, and the three measures that have risen to that level are Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction, and customer effort. But what I always have to say to people is that there was no rule book ever written that said you have to use those mechanisms. You can use whatever you want to measure customer perception, as long as it is reflective of the truth. That is the key. And unfortunately, one of the reasons why there is this obsession with the Net Promoter customer satisfaction mechanism is because leaders are also obsessed with benchmarking, because they want, again, to massage their ego and say we're better than the competitor. But at the end of the day, benchmarking is not really worth the paper it's written on if you don't know how the company that you're benchmarking against has measured what they do in the first place. So my guidance is, it doesn't matter what the mechanism is, as long as it is representative of the end-to-end customer journey and representative of all customers who come within your journey. Not just the happy customers, not just the customers who complete the journey, but those who are unhappy, those who start the journey and don't finish.
Yeah, I agree with you. Another point is about the professional in all areas. Since I started to work with this, most of the people, some of them became president, CIO, others were promoted, because to work with a customer, you have to like person, you have to like people, you have to be a facilitator. Now we have the concept of DevOps, the people who do everything in the company to solve a problem, whatever. What the most important character is that you think that the profession that we are hiring bring for the company, customer experience, has to have? What the main characteristic? We here in Brazil, we are facing most of the people that like people, like person, and they are facilitator.
It's a fascinating question. I'm not often asked that question. And I think it's a really interesting thing to explore, because the customer experience profession is still very new. And I say to people, yes, companies may have been talking about this for a long time, but the Professional Association was only founded in 2011. It's not even 10 years old yet. And so this is still in its infancy. And what has happened over the last 9 years is that there has been a recognition that customer experience is a science, as I like to call it, and there are competencies that sit behind it. Now, the competencies represent the knowledge that customer experience professionals need to have to enable an organization to become sustainably customer-centric. And it's very broad. It goes from everything from measurement to strategy to customer journey management to adoption and accountability. Very, very broad. But there is in my opinion, so that the Professional Association described this as 6 competencies, but I like to add a 7th competency, because the 7th competency, to your point, I describe as courage. To be an effective customer experience professional, you have to have courage, persistence, passion. You have to have the desire to keep going whatever is thrown at you. And being a customer experience professional is incredibly challenging, because fundamentally, we are trying to change the way organizations think. And much of the time, they don't want us to change the way they think. And this is, in fact, I was in a meeting with a company earlier today where the chief marketing officer said that being a customer experience professional can sometimes feel like a thankless task, you know, and it is incredibly hard. And so the most important attribute in my mind is that, yes, we've got to be good at facilitation. Yes, we've got to be good listeners, good counselors. We've got to have the right level of knowledge. But most importantly of all, we have got to have the kind of personality where we know that what we are doing is for the good of the company, not for us. And I don't want this to sound too evangelical, but if a customer experience professional is doing this to make lots of money and get a big job title, then they're not the right person. Customer experience professionals do what's right for the organization. The benefit to us comes later. You know, it's not, if it's about us, you're in the wrong job. Okay. And the story I always share with people is that I was head of group customer experience for an online retailer for 7 years. And I was never promoted in that 7 years because it wasn't about me. I got pay rises, you know, but if it was about me getting promoted, that I would have been doing the wrong job, you know, and this is tough for people to realize. And so what I'll just conclude by saying, customer experience professionals need to have a balance of head and heart. Right? We've got to know it, but we've got to believe it. And if one of those is missing, then this is not for you.
Yeah, normally I said that think with your heart and feel with your brain. Yeah, make the balance.
I love that. Brilliant. I love that.
Another question is, what the importance one company got it if they hire a professional with a certification like you? They are going to be trained by your association as you are a trainer. What the importance on a company when they hire a professional certificate like you?
So the accreditation or accreditations that are available around the world are, like the profession, still very new. So the CCXP accreditation, Certified Customer Experience Professional, which is the only professional qualification in customer experience, is only 6 years old. And so because it's very new, there is still a lack of awareness around the world. And in fact, right now, there are just over 1,100 CCXPs globally. You know, I mean, we're not even scratching the surface yet. So right now, if you said to a leader, I have a professional qualification in customer experience, that they would probably give you a strange look because I didn't even know there was one. But actually, it doesn't matter whether it's the professional qualification or the qualification offered by Forrester or and there are others that exist. Getting that recognition for the skill set that you have earns authority. And I talk a lot about us needing to have authority. And, you know, many organizations, as you know, they think they know what customer experience is all about, but they don't. And by having accreditation, it is giving us more authority to be able to stop businesses thinking that customer experience is a soft, fluffy thing and allow us to educate them in understanding that there is a science behind it. And so I hugely advocate people, when they feel ready, getting that qualification. Because as far as I'm concerned, the more CCXPs there are in the world, the better place the world will be. And so we need more and more people to believe in themselves and getting that accreditation so we can keep establishing the profession around the world.
Yeah, very good, very good. Ian, in your book, Customer What, you said that is part novel, part therapy. Why therapy?
Do you know, doing what we do is, to a degree, we can only really operate in the profession with brutal honesty, you know, and we have to operate with the truth, because it's only when you know the truth that you can get better, and that you can determine how you can change and transform. And when we think about ourselves as human beings, very often, there are many people who look in the mirror and they don't like what they see, but they're not prepared to do anything about it, or it's too difficult, or I don't know how. And we don't enough speak to people that can actually allow us to understand, well, what is it that you're not happy with? And how should you approach it? And why should you approach it? The customer experience profession is surprising to many people when they come across it, because the global community is the most sharing, caring community that people have ever come across. I get people who will message me on LinkedIn, and I'll respond to them, within 24 hours and give them an answer to the question they've asked. And they almost respond with, I can't believe that you responded. Well, why wouldn't I? But, it's because, this is not about us. This is about doing the right thing. And so, for me, that's quite therapeutic. When I can see the whites of people's eyes changing, and I would say this to anyone, not just because I'm talking to a Brazilian, but just before lockdown, as you know, I was in Sao Paulo. So in fact, Sao Paulo was one of the last places that I visited before I was grounded in March. And I attended a conference in Sao Paulo with 400 people. And I've worked in 44 countries around the world. I've been on every continent on earth, but nothing prepared me for what I saw in that room, because what I saw was the most excited, vocal, passionate group of people I've seen anywhere in the world. And it really shocked me, but in a really positive way. I just thought, wow. That the energy, the desire to want to learn and do something and change things. And, that made me feel amazing. I didn't need to say anything, just being there. It was just the energy. And so, this is, I think, a profession, an industry that if you believe in doing what's right for people, customers and employees, the value you get from doing it is as good as therapy.
Yeah, I got it. Very good. And if you remember, what was the best experience that you had in your personal life, or you affect your life or your family?
Well, I very often write about. Well, I've been writing for years. Which is sort of what led to the book. But I've written many blog posts about good and bad experiences that I've had. But there are often experiences that really do stick in your mind, that you sort of, it really wasn't complicated, but it's something that you just never forget. And this might sound like a surprising example, but it's 8 years ago. I live in the northwest of the UK. So as a football man, I live in between Liverpool and Manchester.
Yeah.
In a city called Chester. And I was in London with my family, and we got the train back to Chester. It's about a 2-hour train ride to Chester. And when the train gets to Chester, it splits in two halves. And one half of the train goes back to London. The other half of the train goes to Wales, because we're right on the border with Wales. And when we arrived in Chester, we got off the train, and then there was a lot of commotion as the engineering people started to get onto the platform to separate the trains. And I just happened to be standing where the trains separated with my two daughters at the time. And so we're looking like this, and one of the train guards noticed, and he walked over and he said, "Oh, why don't you two come with me?" He said, "Is it okay if I talk to your children? You two come with me." And he got onto his knees and he started talking to them about what they were doing, why they were doing it. And there was nothing in it for him. You know, I mean, but this was an example of a human understanding the importance of another human. And it was wonderful. Now, the irony is I tweeted the train company about this and they didn't even respond to me, you know, but it's when those kind of things happen, I think it's so important that we acknowledge and recognize it, because customer experience is not difficult. You know, it's really not a difficult thing to understand, but we need to celebrate when those little things are done to inspire others.
Yeah, is some case like you mentioned, as other that you mentioned Brazil about the Frozen Princess Disney, they have one thing in common: autonomy. In most of the business owner, they are afraid to give autonomy for the employee. That's the one challenge for us, in not for Brazil, for other, how to give the permission of the employee to be autonomy to decide the experience going on.
No,
right?
it is. This is a global issue, and again, I'm in this unusual situation of working across the globe, and actually, it's even worse if you go to the Far East, because where you're in very hierarchical societies, you know, in the Far East there's a fear of doing something that you've not been told to do. You know, you as an employee must do exactly what you've been told. Do not deviate from it. But, you know, I think what we've got to try and continue developing is an understanding that if a human being only needs to do what they've been told, you don't need the human to do it. You know, ultimately humans will disappear and they will be taken over by robots and machines. Because if you don't need to think, then it doesn't matter who's performing the task, you know. And I think, unfortunately, this is the legacy of societies around the world, where there is a boss and there are subordinates, and subordinates, no, they can't think. You know, they're gonna do bad things to me. But if we don't change that culture, it will be impossible for organizations to become customer centric, because to be customer centric, it can only happen when you're able to deliver the experience customers have in an environment where everyone is able to think and act in the interests of the customer. Every time they have a conversation, make a decision, perform a task. And if they're not able to do that, then you might as well forget it. You just stop, because you cannot make it happen without that.
Yeah, you're right. Another point is, in 1985, the engineering was created, and our ISO standard is 9000 based in products. Today, one of my theory is now we have an engineer 2.0 focus on customer. That's my theory, okay? 1985 focus on product, now in customer. I tried to name this situation. Ian, you suggested company not focus on product or in one specific contact channel, but in omni-channel experience. The company must be ready for the customer, not matter the contact channel. Do you have one specific name of one or two company that you are doing this right? In any country, you could name it one or two companies that we can now in Brazilian Fox to try to make a benchmark. What?
Yeah, it's again, it's a very good question. I think that it is a very important topic, because, as we know, the world has gone mad for digital technology for many of the right reasons, and as a result of the pandemic, the adoption of technology continues to accelerate, because, you know, the only way we can interact with customers now is virtually and in this digital world. But too many organizations, when they're thinking about the experience, are now thinking about it by channel or by product. So, for example, when they map the customer journey, they want to map the online journey, and then they'll map the, you know, physical journey separately, or they'll map it by different product types. But what we've got to remember is that a customer journey is a customer journey. It's not a channel journey or a product journey, it's a customer journey. And the customer doesn't interact with your online business, they interact with your business. And they may today choose to be online, but they might choose tomorrow to pick up the telephone. And if you treat these two journeys separately, you will misunderstand that interaction. And it won't surprise you to hear me say that the organization globally that has mastered this is Amazon, because they are the masters of recognizing that actually experiences have to be about accessibility. And it's no surprise that even Amazon in certain parts of the world have now created physical stores in certain product lines, where they think it's relevant and makes sense. People don't understand that Amazon have the biggest contact centers in the world. People think, oh, it's just an online thing. No, it isn't. That they have a huge physical operation of logistics and contact centers and various other things. And they look at this as a holistic experience, not individual channels. And what is always fascinating about Amazon, to remind everyone, Amazon sell nothing that's unique. Nothing.
Yeah.
They sell the same stuff as everyone else. It's not the products that differentiate them, it's the whole experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always have an opportunity to talk with Amazon. Is exceptional. Even if the technology is not so great, but they solve it. You are right. You are right.
Yeah, the Amazon's websites are horrible. It doesn't look nice, but that's the point. It's not about looking pretty. It's about the experience working.
Yeah, I agree with you. So in 1999, as I told you, we start with many CRM, CX, now customer success, sales, integration, commercial intelligence. What do you think? I know that most of the universities don't follow the business world. And most of the professionals they are coming may study by themselves, by YouTube, course with you, or the consultant like me, or your books, whatever. And most of the company, when they're going to hire a marketing area or sales area, okay, I want a good sales, a good marketer, but how to the university is out of this. How to prepare the CX professional for the future? It will continue to be the same association, or how to balance what we learn, because most of people try to avoid. For example, Google or Amazon, I forgot they are talking to make a university just for 6 months.
Yes.
You think the 6 months the people are going to make a good marketer, a good sales to think not just in the sales, but the offer, customer, whatever.
Yeah.
How to balance this?
Again, it's really interesting because I remember in March, a journalist in Brazil asked me, what is the future of customer experience? And the response I gave then has changed a little, actually, because when she asked me that question, I said, well, the future is the past. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, the future actually is all about businesses reminding themselves that business is about people. And so whilst everyone wants to talk about AI and all of this whizzy jazzy technology, if we are going to go forward, we've got to remind ourselves that it's not technology or nothing. It is a marriage between process, people, and technology. And customer experience itself is an evolution, and it started all the way back in with direct marketing, we could argue, sort of 20, 30 years ago. But it has evolved from direct marketing to CRM to now customer experience. But actually, going forward, and this is starting to happen already, more and more companies are now talking not just about customer experience, but experience management. And more we will see people using the acronym XM, not just CX, because this is a growing recognition that actually going forward, we can't just look at customer experience in isolation. We have got to equally focus on the employee experience. And we've got to be looking at the alignment between these two things. And some are taking it further and saying the evolution now is that it isn't customer experience or employee experience, it's the human experience. And we've got to be looking at all of this together. And I totally agree with this, because once again, what the pandemic has accelerated is the significance of the employee experience, because businesses have sent people home to work from home, but without really thinking about the practicalities of that. You know, people are being sent home, but they don't even have a desk to work at. You know, they don't sometimes have good Wi-Fi. They might live with their parents, and you know, it's not as simple as it seems. But the way we treat our people is the way our people will treat our customers. And if we're not delivering that experience to the employee, again, we can't deliver the experience we want customers to have. So a long-winded answer to your question, but I think going forward, we've got to broaden our understanding of the experience management of an organization, which could encompass customer, employee experience, technology experience, leadership, a whole series of things to create the right ecosystem to ultimately sustainably meet the needs and interests of the customer.
Yeah, good. Another point is, I was reminding that the England people invent the football, the Brazilian start to play, they improve a lot.
Yes.
They became but we not as much. We could be better because we lost for German 7-1 or whatever. So it's always, at soccer, you have to play hard to know. And but now we Brazil, we are not so danger as we used to be in soccer.
Because you've got to keep reinventing.
Yeah.
I think it is natural. It is almost natural human behavior to reach the peak and then relax.
Yeah. It's danger. And you mentioned when you were, as you told, and I watched previously, you said that Brazilian people, they have a passion, enthusiasm in customer experience, subject, or whatever. We are like this. If you could bring some from Brazilian people to teach as England people taught us soccer, what do you bring for us Brazilian to teach England professional or whatever?
That's a good question. And I think I don't want to do a disservice to Brazilians. So what I'm about to say, I'm sure that there are many who would say that they are good at this, but I think to a degree that there is I think it comes back to this balance of head and heart. You know, I think sometimes when we are too enthusiastic, too emotional, then we start to get ourselves into a position where are people trying to make a decision based on raw emotion, or are they basing a decision on fact combined with emotion? And I think the British can be very calm in the way that they think about things and then make a decision. Now, obviously, that's not necessarily the case right now with Brexit and how we're dealing with the pandemic and everything else. But I think that ability to just slow down a little bit and think about it is not such a bad thing. In addition, I think structure and rigor. You know, I think what we are quite good at is planning and, you know, combining academic understanding with practical understanding. And I think when British people get put into a culture like Brazil, where everything's so fun, it's like, whoa, you know, it's sort of, I just slow down. And I think that that's not such bad advice. I think it's the energy is amazing. and we need more energy, more enthusiasm. But I think one of the things that I have struggled from in my career is that there must be Brazilian in me somewhere, because I have a huge amount of passion, but sometimes leaders have accused me of being too emotional, too over enthusiastic, and they've used that against me, and I think it's an interesting point, because there will be leaders who, they're just overexcitable, and it's fear, because many leaders are fearful of that enthusiasm and passion.
Yeah.
We don't want that to be a barrier. So don't lose the passion, but just be wary sometimes of being too emotional.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And about the one thing that the last question that I want to ask you, the humanity always grow about the crisis that will happen. Now, pandemic bring in first the digital transformation. Many call center working at home, whatever, the customer service working whatever the place. What the information technology, what everything was faced to make this digital transformation fastly. What do you think that will be continuing after this COVID?
Again, it's an interesting question, and how I answer it has changed a little bit, because we now have no idea when it's going to end. If you had asked me this in May, I'd have said, by September we'll be back to normal again. But quite clearly, this is going to be with us for a long time. I think that there is no doubt that virtual working will continue once the pandemic has gone. I think what many organizations have recognized now is that there was a lot of unnecessary traveling. I think international travel will just not happen anywhere near the scale that it used to do, because you don't need to do that. However, I think human beings need physical interaction. They need face-to-face interaction, and not just through a screen. So I think that will come back. I think we do need people to be together, leaning off each other and getting energy from each other and collaborating and talking. But I think what this pandemic has made companies realize is that they can do whatever they need to do quickly. I think it's fascinating that I'm working with an energy company at the moment. And for 10 years, this energy company argued with their compliance function to get people to work from home. And the compliance function for 10 years said, no, can't happen. It's not possible, that there are too many risks. When the lockdown came, they had everyone working from home within 3 days. We can do whatever we want, put our minds to it. And so, I think going forward, that means if we want people to come to an office, we can do it very quickly. If we want them to work from home, we can do it very quickly. But I just think it will make us a more adaptable, more agile workforce who will be able to, just change according to circumstances. And that can only be a good thing.
Yeah. Ian, now I invite you to invite my subscription to know your website, what kind of service you provide, your association, please. Feel free.
Well, it's very kind of you. I'm a terrible salesman, so I don't normally talk about that kind of thing. But anyone who doesn't know me, haven't come across me, my website is ijgolding.com, and there are over 600 articles that I have written that you can access through my website. You can also find details of how to buy my book on there if you would like to. Just for information, actually, I am in the process of having my book translated into Portuguese.
Great.
So I can't tell you exactly when that will be ready, but hopefully in early 2021 that will be ready. And that is a recognition, actually, of the the huge amount of interest in Brazil. So that's coming. In terms of the professional association, I am just an ambassador of the association, but cxpa.com is where you can find out about the professional qualification, among other things. But if anyone wants to chat with me or ask me questions, they're very welcome to. And the easiest way to do that is just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Good, very good. And let me, the last question is, if God will decide to hire you for the last mission, what mission would you like to embrace?
Oh, what a question.
Yeah.
You know what I would love to be able to do is to communicate to every employee around the world that what they do is acknowledged, recognized, and not taken for granted. That's what I'd love to do.
Yeah. Not easy. Not never easy.
Oh God, you can do that.
Yeah. Depends on sponsorship. So I want to thank you, everybody, to watching this, to spend your time listening, study, because now at Customer Experience, we are career. We are in the beginning yet. So if you are investing your time, listen to this guy like Ian Gold, you are not wasting your time. We are getting much time and profit for your career. Thank you very much, Ian. I hope you'll see you soon. Last year, we make business consultant together here in Brazil. We are trying to prepare many things that we are working together with all people who participate in my book, because you are the guide in Brazil that we are creating, not just the software solution, but the culture. For me, that's the reason I like your passion too, that you bring in your eyes.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Heverton, for your lovely, kind words. Thank you for inviting me to chat with you. It's huge. I've hugely enjoyed it, and maybe we'll do it again sometime as well.
Of course, you can count by me if you need them. Okay. God bless you, and next World Cup, Brazil will prepare for England, I hope.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Heverton. Stay safe.
Bye. Bye.